I want to welcome everybody for coming in and participating in this webinar today. Today we're talking a little bit about in our sandwich generation series, family caregiver plans and the importance of them. Maybe some good ideas on how to make them, how to make the family work together as a unit a little bit more effectively. I want to say thanks to all of my panelists who have come in to help out on this as well. We'll introduce you guys in just a moment. But as many of you guys know who are familiar with Generation Bridge, but those who are not, this is a faith-based initiative. It's something I do as a service project. I make no money on it. My basic thing is in 2018, I went to my church. I said, how can we help? And the church said, hey, maybe we could do something that deals with caregivers and the sandwich generation. And ever since then, I've been doing a lot of this work. My main goal here is quite simply just to put people who have questions in front of people who have answers. And I have three really amazing people who have a lot of answers when it comes to this idea of caregiving. That being said, because it is it's a faith-based mission for me, I always think it's important that this is something that I felt called to do. I asked God kind of in prayer, what can I do that can be meaningful? And he said, use some of the skills that you have I say he said, but this is the answer I got. But it basically came to me that I can do something of service in this way and something that's helpful for the community. Today, looking into wisdom from the scripture, just to kind of set this up, the family caregiving plan is not something new. In 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 1 through 5, it says, do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were your father. Treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters with absolute purity. Give proper recognition to those widows who are really in need. But if a widow has children or grandchildren, these should learn, first of all, to put their religion into practice by caring for their own family and so repaying their parents and grandparents, for this is pleasing to God. So in this sense, we're talking about this family unit that has decided, yes, it's time for us to really step in and help to take care of someone. And today we're going to talk with some amazing individuals from different walks of life, some from helping people to get placed when you need more care than what you can do on your own, and others who are here serving the entire community of Lower Fairfield County, Connecticut, in what they can do given different situations that they may have. So I'm going to introduce, or I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you, and then we're going to get right started into this. So, Katie, would you mind starting out and introducing yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Brian. My name is Katie Regan, and I'm the director of the Aging Answers Department here at the Southwestern Connecticut Agency on Aging. We coordinate services and supports that are both federally and state funded, as well as some private grant programs for 14 towns in Lower Fairfield County. So from Monroe, Trumbull, over down to Greenwich. We are one of 5 Agency on Agings in the state of Connecticut, and the Agency on Aging as a whole is funded under the Older Americans Act of the federal government. So there are multiple Agency on Agings in all 50 states.
Excellent. Thank you and welcome, and really appreciate you coming in to give us your perspective on the family care plan. Lisa, how about for yourself?
Lisa Bisson, I'm the Director of Community Outreach for Masonicare at Wesley Village. Back in January, Wesley Village joined Masonicare and created a statewide network of senior care options, both for seniors who want to remain in their homes and for seniors who maybe need a little more care and community living is more appropriate. So I've worked with families on transitioning their loved ones into assisted living, into memory care, and also worked with families when the choice was really to keep them home and connecting them with caregivers throughout the Masonicare community who can help them.
Excellent. And Justin, last but not least, tell us who you are.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Brown, and I am a senior advisor with a company called Oasis Senior Advisors. We're a national company. My territory happens to be Westchester and Fairfield County, but I pretty much in the last 10 years have specialized my career in Lower Fairfield County. We are an absolute free service to families. Typically I say, nowhere in life anyone teaches you about taking care of your elderly loved ones or what to do in a situation. So a lot of times families are just overwhelmed and confused, where I guide them into really navigating senior care options. I specialize in doing placements for independent living, assisted living, and memory care.
Excellent. All right, so I'm going to stop the share here for now, and then it's going to go right back to the four of us. And what I really want to concentrate on today, and we're going to kind of let this be a free-for-all, but this is where we had people register in and give us some questions. But we also just know there's some common pitfalls when it comes to taking care of loved ones. Would you guys mind sharing some examples of when either a family care or a family comes together to create something that works well for everybody? Or maybe you could talk about something that was a bad experience and what are the lessons learned in all those situations? Maybe we'll start with Lisa.
Sure. I think the toughest challenge when dealing with families and making certain decisions about their loved ones is putting aside personal feelings. There's always that one sibling who maybe we all feel doesn't pull the same amount of weight as everybody else, or that one, a brother who lives out of state, so they're not dealing with the day-to-day mom stuff. And putting some of those things aside and biting your tongue a little bit, because once you get to the point where you need to make some serious decisions about your loved ones and their future and their care, you kind of have to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, what happened then happened then. Moving forward, how are we going to handle this? And let's not, make check marks over who did what up until now. Let's start now and figure out what's the best way to balance things moving forward so we make the right choices.
I think that's a great point. I mean, obviously, being able to say, okay, recognize that what's happened up to this point is done. Now I want to help. How can I help? Not being held against me that I haven't been involved up to this point. I think it's really good that in family environments, we forgive when we have to. Kate or Justin, either of you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, well, exactly like Lisa said. Typically, I don't have the statistic in front of me, but a majority of caregivers for their loved ones are the female adult daughter. So a lot of times, being the adult daughter that maybe lives closest, it builds a lot of resentment when they're supposed to be, or they're looked at as the main caregiver, and the other siblings don't really get involved. So the way I really kind of educate my families is to create a plan where one person might be better at doing the finances. One person might be better at doing, the ordering of medications and doctor's appointments. And the other person might be the hands-on care. So exactly like Lisa said, is leave everything, draw the line in the sand, leave everything in the past. And how can we come together and use our skills, obviously to make the best possible care plan for our loved one.
Great. And Katie, how about for you?
Yeah, I can't agree enough, obviously, with what Justin and Lisa had said. We deal with family caregivers all the time. And what, in addition to, I'm one of four, right? So multiple siblings, but there's so many that I encounter that they're an only child. So if that's the case, again, I encourage those to, lean on their cousins, lean on a trusted family friend, lean on a fellow church member of their loved one. Because again, you can't do this all alone. It's a lot. It's a lot to take on. Again, at the Agency on Aging, the Choices Program, we have all the resources, even if we don't provide them all, we know of the community supports in each and every town that we cover. So we already have those applications. We already know what the eligibility guidelines are, or and how much they can assist and how they can assist. So let us do some of that work for you. And lastly, what I really want to point out, I was actually speaking at another panel last night at the Stanford Senior Center, and what one of the panelists had stated, her father unfortunately was failing in his age, and she just wanted to even start the conversation. Again, she's in this profession, and so starting the conversation sooner rather than later, again, is going to alleviate so much stress and caregiver burn and burnout that you might feel. I thought what she said was a wonderful idea. You know, her and her father got together for Sunday breakfast every week or every other week. So they had an enjoyable time together, going out to the diners, going out to a restaurant. And then she would sprinkle in, you know what I mean? A little bit each week. So it wasn't so overwhelming. It's not that they were sitting at the kitchen table and she wanted everything right then, soup to nuts. You know, it was little by little, she was starting to gather the information so that when it came to the point when she needed to really help her father make some decisions, at least she had the knowledge of what his wishes are. Does he wish to remain home? You know, banking information, power of attorney, etc. But I thought that was a really interesting approach that she took and insightful.
No, I think that's a really great point because sometimes the family care plan, we think, okay, it's after we've already said we need to intervene. And we're not thinking of we need to be having these conversations leading up to
Mm-hmm.
it, so that the planning isn't coming, as we always say, in some sort of an emergency. It's coming up in a natural progression that doesn't feel like it's overwhelming at one time. I can say, with my brother and I, when we were taking care of my grandmother, we she was in Illinois and I'm here in Connecticut. We relied very heavily on a family friend that was out there. And it was great to get updates from her, and she would tell us when we should be really worried about something. But my brother and I were put into two different places. I was power of attorney on healthcare. He was power of attorney on financial matters, right? And at first, my thought was this is not going to work. Like we're not going to be talking to each other. It's not going to work. In the end, my father was right when he put it in his will that we would do that. Because he was previously, before he passed, he was the power of attorney on both of those. In his mind, everything made sense to do it that way, and it actually worked out. One, it didn't have all of it being on me as maybe I would have thought it should have, and that meant that we could share it. So it was really good. But I also was very blessed that I had those conversations with my grandmother and my father well in advance of these types of situations being needed. When does it? I think one of the biggest questions that I always hear on this is, again, one person takes it on and other siblings aren't necessarily volunteering or stepping up. But in some cases, I want to push back on that a little bit. I know that that does happen in many cases, but in some cases, it might be that because you've taken things on, that I don't even know you need the help, right? Or I don't even think you feel like you need the help. And I think I had seen in one of the documents, and we'll provide a document after this, something that was really valuable in my mind was that you schedule family meetings regularly. You put them in so that everybody's on the same page and so forth. And then at that point, you can be saying, like, this is what I'm doing. I really need help with this. Because I think sometimes we think, oh, Brian's got it. He's got it covered. It's all set. And I don't. But I don't say anything, and therefore nobody knows that I need help. And then I start resenting that nobody's volunteering to help. What do you guys think about that?
Exactly the truth. And that's the whole I was saying before with the resentment part is number one is communication. It just in life in general, communicating your needs, your loved one's needs. And second is just asking for help. And Katie said it before, it truly takes a village to care for an elder person, especially when you start getting into like dementia and cognitive impairment. It really, truly takes a village. So the more that you can communicate your needs and lean on other people, the more successful it will be.
Yeah, again, it does. It happens, even in my own family, right? Again, I'm one of four. I'm that sandwich generation, so I have a very active 11 and 14-year-old who we have sports every night and meet the teachers and whatnot. And I also have an 84-year-old father. So it's kind of like I communicate with my brothers. Well, where can I chip in? Because unfortunately, I can't be there every night. But maybe my other brother whose kids are all out of the house and older, he can be. But, I can help on the resources end, or I can help on the meal prep, etc. So kind of really communicating with those that are in your circle, well, and recognizing that, if my brother and sister-in-law, again, they're in a different stage of their life and they're off on a cruise. Okay, I know that well in advance. So I'm not gonna be calling them to say, hey, can you, dad is saying that, he needs this done at the house. I know that he's not there. So again, I think we touched upon this before. Just, if you can know and plan a little bit in advance, it's just going to alleviate that off your mind. Preparation is key.
Yeah, I'll just do a little mini plug for all those who are joining and who might watch this video later on. We have two other webinars in this series where we talk through sort of the resources that are available and then also time-saving tips. And both of those, there's also a document, just like there'll be one with this, that kind of walks through what we discuss and some of the things that you can take as a strategy on these. But it's real important. In the last one, we talked about how the family comes together on a calendar, as an example. And just like you said there, Katie, knowing when somebody's going on vacation so that someone else can fill in the gap. I like to go on vacation and not have to worry about anything. And so if I know that someone's already coming in to do that, it's great. But it is a team effort, and it's not always easy to organize a team. So someone usually has to take that on. Lisa, in your mind, any tips or any things that you've seen in terms of communication that seem to really work or thrive for people that someone could take from this conversation today and say, oh, if I apply this now to my situation, I should be in better shape?
If you don't ask, you don't know. And don't assume people are not helping because they don't want to help. They might not know what you need help with. And look at it as an opportunity. All families aren't perfect, but look at it as an opportunity to form a common bond. And sharing that family time and having those conversations and knowing you can vent with each other. Sometimes you don't have somebody who really knows what mom's like, and talking to a sibling about what mom's like is very different. But take advantage of the opportunity to kind of lean on your siblings and your family members and your loved ones. And don't be afraid to ask or tell or share or question something, because just because no one else is questioning it doesn't mean you're wrong too. They may not see it through the same eyes as you do. For Katie and Justin and I being in the industry, we see certain things. There are things we expect to see, but we also probably see things, miss some things that an outsider would probably notice more. And it's having, if you've got 4 people, then you've got 4 different perspectives, just making sure that the process runs smoothly, everything is covered, and everybody is doing their part.
I think that's great. I also think, just from my own perspective, because I'm biased on in-person and, webinars, that kind of thing, attending something like this as a family, or looking at your local senior center. So yes, we're all in Connecticut, but these practices and these ideas actually translate everywhere around the country, and in many cases, internationally. It's really the same concepts. Your local senior center and your local agencies on aging are really great resources for the family to go to together, and to start to learn about what's available, what's not. We also talk about chats and creating a text chain or a messenger group or something where you're able to continually talk to each other in that respect. Because I think what you said before, Lisa, is this idea that you don't know what the other person might actually be doing either. So the assumption is I'm doing all this stuff and Brian's not doing anything. Brian might actually be doing some stuff, and you just don't know about it because you're not all talking about what it is that you're doing. One thing that I noticed in the document, Justin, that you had shared with me that we used as a basis for this, that we're going to be producing here, is that I hadn't really thought about, and I think you guys would have a really good perspective because we're all in that sort of younger children to teenage children kind of zone here. The importance of educating the children about what's going on. I'm traditionally thinking family care plan, it's all about those who are actually doing the caretaking, but what was really helpful in the stuff that you had shared is this idea of educating children. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, since it was on the form that I sent, Brian. Over the years, my years of doing memory care and, specifically a little bit more with the dementia aspect is a lot of kids don't know. So, it is all age related. You're obviously not going to go sit a 4-year-old down and tell them these things. But, as the kids get older, they're sponges. They feel the tension. They feel the difference. So I always recommended families when I would sit down with them and there were young children involved is, just let them know, this is what's going on with grandma, grandpa. This is what's going on. We're working, Uncle so and out. We're working together to make sure that, they're okay and we're able to do this. I believe there was a book called Grandma Doesn't Remember or Grandma Can't Remember, which was a great book about specifically dementia and children. But yeah, educating everybody, letting them know that, it's going to be okay. And, you guys are coming together as a family will definitely benefit you in the long run.
Yeah, I love that idea of just bringing them into this so that they understand why you might be conflicted about being able to do something with them at a particular time. We have sports that we're going to be taking kids to and so forth, but there might be times when we have to say, listen, we can't do that because we have to go take care of somebody. And if they're brought along with it, then they understand it more. But if they're not, then it becomes more of a conflict. And Lisa and Katie, you guys have teenagers and so forth. Like how does it, what do you think about this idea of like kind of bringing them along for the ride and informing them about everything that's going on?
Sure.
I
I
think,
mean, oh,
go ahead,
um,
Katie.
sure. Sorry. Um, I mean, I'm here for it. Again, my father's aging in place at 84. There's no for him, there's no signs or symptoms of dementia. It's more physical. But he's been in the hospital and I've brought my kids to see him. You know what I mean? To be open. And I was open to their questions, on the drive home, even just again, it's 11 and 14-year-olds, their visions, their are different. We're used to being in a hospital setting, so all the sights and sounds were foreign to them. I mean, that works for my family. I also think you have to obviously know your own child, and what, although you want to be open, how the best to approach it. Whether it be a book, as Justin mentioned, and there is a number of great literature out there for all ages, from little ones up to teenagers and even into the 20s, even for obviously for adults too. But I think it's a marvelous idea.
Yeah, I think it's kind of based in this. Uh, as I was reading through that, it reminded me of a conversation I had about my grandmother when I was in Illinois, trying to figure out where was the best place that she was going to have to go with her dementia. And one of the guys that was at one of the facilities, he said, "Well, listen, 100 years ago, Grandma lived with the family in the house, and everybody just knew Grandma was upstairs looking out the window, or." And I don't mean to characterize it like that, but it really, grandma or grandpa was there in the house, and the kids grew up with grandma and grandpa in the house, and they all shared in that responsibility. And as we've gotten to be, blessed to be able to be outside of necessarily one familial household, right? That these types of things, they're kind of taken away from that. And so we kind of lose that connection with those kids and the grandkids. And I think it's just important to really
Mhm.
bring them along for that ride. Lisa, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about this idea of engaging friends and people that maybe are not part of the family. Obviously in assisted living or other places, friends come in, stop in, say hello. It's really important for those different touch points. But how do you kind of get them in engaged and fulfilling kind of that idea? Because I did see a couple of comments in our registration where people have volunteered from my church, for example, but then
Mhm.
never actually went forward and did it. How do you
Mhm.
engage those friends, the neighbors, other people to kind of participate?
Well, my journey as far as being a family caregiver started about 15 years ago when my husband's grandfather moved in with us. And Grampy was beloved. Everybody loved Grampy. And over the course of the time he was with us, his there were cognitive changes, there were personality changes, stuff like that. And my kids were kind of faced with some things that they didn't really expect from fun-loving Grampy, who would make them scrambled eggs every morning. So we definitely had to tap into folks surrounding us. Grampy had a huge following through the fire department. Everybody always asked about him, but nobody knocked on the door to come visit him. So sometimes you got to get in the car and you got to bring Grampy to them. And there were times where we would drop Grampy off at the firehouse, knowing that a bunch of his friends were there and there to talk and engage with him. And then it just kind of becomes a habit. Well, Grampy's always going to be there on Wednesdays. If for some reason we don't bring him there, somebody calls and says, "Oh, is he coming?" You can kind of start enlisting a little transportation help. I need somebody to bring him there. But when somebody offers to help, take it. If somebody says, "Oh, I can come over one day," then schedule that day for them to come over because you don't know if a promise is an empty promise or not until you take a person up on it. So, again, the resentment and all of that about being alone in this, if somebody says, "Well, I can come by with dinner on Tuesdays if that helps," say, "Yeah, come by." If there's folks at church who start talking to mom, after mass or during, coffee or whatever, try to encourage a connection. "Oh, would you like to come over and have coffee at my mom's house next week?" So that you're kind of cracking the seal a little bit and forcing that engagement and holding people accountable for it. Because everybody says, "I'd love to help," but it's until you say, "Can you now?" that you realize who's really sincere about it.
Well, and I think, to kind of go from the other side too is in that moment, we might very well be super open and willing to do it, right? But then we get back into our own lives and we
Hmm.
get distracted, right? And that sort of thing that we said and we meant kind of goes out of our minds. And I think it's perfectly acceptable for someone to say, "Hey, you remember how you volunteered? Is there a way we could schedule it?" I like what you said there is making it actually be a point. When I deal with trying to book time with my friends or other things, right? We get in a group chat and everything. It's like, "Yeah, we all got to get together soon." Great thing for people to say, right? But then what you really need to do is to take it a step further and say, "Okay, how about next week on Friday?" Oh, that won't
Hmm.
work for everybody. How about the following month on this date on this time? Who can make it? Great. Three of us can make it. We're going to make it happen, right? And it's that next step to actually get it committed. How about
Can I just,
yeah, go
oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry, Brian. Can I just piggyback on that real quick?
Sure.
One thing actually my family did as well. My aunt unfortunately suffered a stroke, and my cousins were her primary caregivers. And she was home for a number of years. Um, and eventually it did, it got to a point where really my cousins really needed some assistance. And we put up something simple like a sign up genius. You know what I mean? Because it also
Mhm.
you get that little reminder that gets to your phone. Because again, like you said, we all get busy. Life does happen, and suddenly you forget that, like, oh, that's right. I went over there to help do the laundry on a Saturday at 10 o'clock or something like that. But you get that little reminder to your phone, you're a little bit more apt to like, oh, okay. And again, or at least reach out, and say, you know what, I'm so sorry. Bobby's got something going on now and I can't make it on Saturday, but at least they know in advance. They're not waiting there for you.
Mhm.
There's so many things too. The meal trains is another thing. Everybody takes a day to, I mean, technology nowadays, and again, we all have it on our phone right in our pocket at all times. So there's so many little, um, again, little free technology websites that you could utilize to again, kind of push it out there to all your friends and family, and maybe that will make them more apt to do it, and everybody sees it. So everybody knows, you know what I mean? You're a little bit more accountable, let's be honest, because
Well,
if
and
everybody sees that Katie's supposed to be there on Saturday and then I'm not, you know.
no, but I love that. And then there's nothing wrong with that if we volunteered
Yeah.
in for something like that, right? And I think um, for when I saw that statement come in one of the registrations, I really was taken aback because it was like the church said that. And I'm like, you know what then? If our church says it, right, we've got to then start to put it into action. And then we have to maybe come up with a care team at church. And I think that's something that, a practical solution would be, can you, when you're in your social networks, right? Can you create sort of a care team that also has family, but also has friends and then start to say, all right, can you help me organize around this? Can you provide something volunteer, like a sign up genius or whatever? Can you sign up for these things over the next month or over the next 2 months? And maybe it's okay, my part is going for an hour conversation and it's going to be on Wednesday next week. That way I'm committed to it and it's in my schedule versus it's some nebulous thing that never really ends up happening. So I love that idea. We had a question in the chat, and I know we're getting close to that 2:30 hour. But I did want to try to address it here. I think the general gist of this is if I have to travel and I'm caring for someone, how do I make sure that the person who might be coming, it might be a sibling, it might be another friend or something like that, how do I make sure that they kind of keep my loved one doing sort of the regular schedule? So things like encouraging to get exercise and get out of the house instead of sitting and sleeping in the recliner, or, doing some extra stuff other than just kind of like, okay, I'm just coming by to see if you're still alive, right? Is there anything that you guys, any tips or any ways that that might be a good way to try to help that extra caregiver try to get the loved one to do the things that maybe you do on a normal basis?
Sure. I
Really
mean, I
comes down
hate
to
to.
yeah,
Oh,
communication.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead, Katie. Go ahead.
communication, and no, it comes down to communication, and I hate to give anyone a little bit more homework to do because I know caregivers got a lot going on, but not that it needs to be to the minute, at 9 o'clock we do this and at 10 o'clock we do this, but um some loose guideline as to, here's the puzzle that she really enjoys to do. You know what I mean? Or here, if it's a great day, do you think, her cane is right by the door? Do you think you guys can walk around the block? She really loves to look at the flowers, in the neighborhood or something. So kind of being a little bit specific in your requests and either emailing them, putting them on the fridge, leaving them in a notebook, something. So again, communication, just so they have an idea of what your loved one does enjoy to do and leaving that available and ready for them right there on the kitchen table or, on the coffee table. So it's not like they have to go searching.
What I love about what you did there though is you didn't just make it a list. You gave a reason why
Yes.
it's important.
Mm-hmm.
It's because my mom really loves to go see the flowers. She really, loves to go talk with the neighbor if they're out. That kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing. It turns it from being this is a task to
Yeah.
this is how you can help. In
Mm-hmm. And this is enjoyment for them. You know what I mean? So maybe they're seeing the other side, or this is going to brighten her day too. You
very
know?
good. Justin or Lisa, you want to chime in on this?
And you also have to give grace too. A lot of times a family member that's the main caregiver, they do something a certain way, and they expect everyone to do it, whether it's a hired professional or family. And you have to understand nobody's going to do it the way you do it. Everybody's different. So you kind of give grace if they didn't go for an exercise walk, but they sat and read mom a book. It's a win. So yeah, you got to give grace, and you got to communicate your needs, and it should all work out.
Excellent. Go ahead, Lisa.
I was just going to say, I agree with Katie spot on about the details, though. Um, Letting whoever's taking care of mom or dad know that dad hates broccoli.
Yeah.
Just, because here somebody is going to be a little nervous and a little anxious about making dinner or whatever. And here I make this, pot roast and potatoes and I put broccoli on the plate. And now my dad won't touch the plate because there's broccoli on it, and it's to us as caregivers, we see it every day and we do it blindly without even realizing that they only take their coffee black, but put 2 ice cubes in it because they're going to say it's too hot to drink. you know, those little narrations of the story are probably more helpful than we think because both parties, your loved one and the person caring for them, is going to be kind of hypersensitive. Oh, this isn't the way Katie does it. I don't like it like this because Katie always does this. And it shouldn't be a comparison or a competition. But if there's pitfalls to avoid, put them down on paper. Make sure you mention that at 7 o'clock we have to watch Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. Doesn't matter if the game is on, doesn't matter if you're, just walking in the door. That has to be on because that's what happens at that time. And the less you can, divert from the schedule, the easier things will go.
I think that's great. I mean, ultimately, a couple big things that I take away from that. absolutely give some grace, but giving some specifics there is also good. I can take my own role as the primary cook in the family. I know what each kid is going to eat or not eat if I do it, right? If I put cheese on one of my kids' plates, it's not going to get eaten. And even though I don't like to make custom orders, if it comes to pasta with cheese or without cheese, I know that is easy enough. But if somebody comes in and does it for her, and I haven't told her that Daisy does not eat cheese on her plate, and they put that on there, then they're going to deal with that little bit of not a tantrum, but you're going to deal with somebody who's not eating, and then you're going to have conflict, right? So giving some more of that context and some of those things, I think, is absolutely wonderful. We're at the end of our time. I think what I'd love to do here is just, I think I'd love to close with one thing on my end, which is I think everybody who's watching this can see the value that people who live in this world can provide. And every single person that's on here, but also in your local area or at your local senior center or at your local, even, nice facilities like Wesley Village or Masonicare, or someone like Justin who does consulting for families about trying to think about whether or not a care option is right for their loved one. You call them and they're a wealth of information. Actively look out for them. They can help you very quickly and point you in the right direction versus you trying to figure it out by searches or other things like that. Look to your local resources to really try to find some help. How can people get in touch with you or your companies? And then we'll wrap up from there. Katie?
Sure. I'll start. Yeah, I mean, the best way, honestly, to reach out to SWACA with any questions that you may have, soup to nuts, regarding a loved one who's a senior or younger disabled. The best way to reach us is to call the toll-free 1-800 number, which is 1-800-994-9422. And it will route you to our choices department where there's trained professionals who are, able to navigate you through the whole social service realm. And just quickly to touch upon that, 800 number is across the whole entire state. So it works on the prefix that you're calling from. So if you're calling from the Trumbull, Bridgeport, Greenwich, Westport area, it will route you to our office. If you're located in Seymour, it's going to route you to the New Haven office. If you live in Waterbury, it's going to route you there. So it's going to route you to your direct agency on aging that covers your neck of the woods.
Excellent. Lisa?
You can reach me at 203-225-5027. My office is located at Masonicare at Wesley Village in Shelton. Masonicare has communities throughout the state, including Mystic and Wallingford and Cheshire and Newington and Farmington, and we have the home care branch. So you can start with me if you're just kind of dipping your foot into whether or not senior living or home care is the right option. But if Masonicare is not the right option for you, I'm going to refer you to my buddy Justin, because if we can't help you, he certainly can. But the important thing is to call and start the ball rolling with a local referral source or a local person who can tell you what's available to you right now. So again, if you want to get in touch with me directly, it's 203-225-5027, and I'm located at Wesley Village in Shelton.
Awesome. Justin?
Thank you, Lee. I appreciate that. We've known each other a long time. She's great. My number is 203-564-0037. And the best part about that is call me with anything. It's absolutely free. You could have a question about a doctor or a rehab, a hospital, or if it's SWACA information. That's really what I do. I'm a connector, and I connect people to resources. Real quick, one thing that we kind of didn't really talk about, but I think everyone should leave with it, is advanced directives. You cannot really do much of anything without having your advanced directives. Power of attorney, healthcare proxy, just came to mind today because you would think that everybody has that in place. And I met a family, only child, and there's nothing. You can't access an account or anything. So yeah, please get that. Make sure that's in line. And if you need anything, just give us a call.
Very good. All right. Thank you all. And I hope you all have a blessed day. And anybody who sees this, I hope you also have a blessed day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye now.